Time for NFL Week 10. We've got NFL Betting Blitz here. I am Gino Bucola, back after a few weeks where I was focused in on the Breeders' Cup and horse racing, and my good buddy Chase Sessoms, the Wolf of Oakland. Ooh, how we doing today, Wolf? It's been a while since you and I linked up for some sort of a show. We used to talk racing, football, all sorts of stuff, and you've been very kind to fill in for a few weeks helping out Eric. How are things going on your end?
Going well. I'm going to be sad whenever I'm sent back down to AAA following this. It's things have been good. Staying busy as always.
Now, for all of you who are watching, a couple important things to discuss as we go throughout our show. Chase and I are going to go through all of the games that are still left. There's a game going on right now, so we'll talk about the remaining Sunday games and the Monday game. We will encourage all of you, if you're sitting back, if you're going to be having a nice Sunday, if you're in the state of Iowa, you can sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account, and they will actually give you a bonus if you use our promo code FAST300. You can see it scrolling across the bottom. Chase and I are horse players too, so if you know horse racing, you know DRF in the Daily Racing Forum for being a real trusted source in horse racing, and now they're expanding over into the sports and now in the state of Iowa. And also, if you're someone who likes to play the games, if you like to get a little bit of action, check out Parlay Play, parlayplay.io. It's a fantasy sports website where you can parlay props together. What I like about this one, Chase, they give you the option to bet the over or under on someone's projected fantasy points, which is really cool because I think a lot of us out there are playing fantasy leagues. You know what your players are sort of projected each week. This guy's supposed to get 12.5 or 13.2. And I think that's how a lot of people sort of base what they're expecting. And a lot of times, you have a player where it's like, I just feel like he's going to get over that. Right? Maybe it's going to be a combination of like some rushing, some receiving, a touchdown. But like a lot of times I'm like, nah, he's going to be way under that. And now you can use fantasy points as a measuring stick and a gauge. I kind of just like the options they have,
Oh, yeah. I can only think of how much I could have made off of Tommy Trimble on Thursday for getting more than a yard.
Exactly. So we will get you all set up for all of these games. And Chase, before we get into Browns versus Ravens as our first game that we're going to preview, I just wanted to give some overall thoughts on why some of the scoring is down this year, why it's not been the most sexy football throughout a lot of the year. We've had 47 different starting quarterbacks this year. We've had 51 different quarterbacks take a snap, which is just insane. This week, a third of the league is starting a rookie quarterback. 1/3. These were some of our matchups last week. Clayton Tune versus Watson. Tyson Bagent versus Derek Carr. Will Levis versus Kenny Pickett. Josh Dobbs versus Heineke. Brett Ripien versus Jordan Love. Sam Howell versus Mac Jones. Minshew versus Bryce Young. Tommy DeVito versus Aiden O'Connell. And one of our better games was Baker versus Stroud. Baker, who's been much maligned, and Stroud, who's a rookie. I mean, we just have a lot of bad quarterbacks or not experienced quarterbacks playing football right now.
Now, you could either think of it like that, or you could think of it as very much like the glass half full thing of, well, now it just means that we have all these rookie quarterbacks, so we're on to like the new generation in the NFL, and who's going to be this and who's going to do that. And like, I think that's a fun way to think about it. Like, will this like
transition? Completely agree, because we don't have the Tom Brady's, the Drew Breeses, the Roethlisbergers, the Rivers, those guys who were around for 15, 20 years, right? And who all had those solid, and you knew you were going to get just above average quarterback play from those guys each and every year. And in a few years, that might be the case for a lot of these guys like Levis, who actually looks pretty good ahead of schedule, I think. And we're going to talk about him in just a minute. So just some overall big picture stuff as Chase and I get into this week's NFL game. So Chase, where can everybody else that loves you and that enjoys your analysis, where can they find you and talk to us about some of the things that you do so they can see you on a day-to-day or more of a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, sure. You can always find me being abrasive on Twitter at Oaklawn. I also do a podcast for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's a horse racing podcast called The Notorious OTB. The handle there under my face at Notorious_OTB. Put that out 3 times a week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We'll either have an interview or we'll have a couple sequences that we take a look at. And then, I'm all over the place with the Big Galoot XFL Gym. Of course, the whole Buffalo, as I've deemed him, Gino, he's so committed to the bid. He gives you everything. He is the whole Buffalo.
Jim is amazing. And Wolf, your neck of the woods is going to be opening up not too long. Oaklawn, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Just a few weeks, I think, right?
December 9th, I believe. I had Nancy Holthus on the other day, and she said, I promised to always promote it with incorrect World War II dates. So on Pearl Harbor Day, check out the Oaklawn opener.
There we go. Well, you're going to check out a lot of football analysis and some game previews from us right now. Let's start with the big, very important divisional game, Browns at the Ravens. The Browns have had one of the, if not the best defense in football so far this year. And for them, Watson actually played like the best game he's played last week since coming back. I know that was against Arizona, who doesn't have a very good defense. But Chase, for this Browns team, they don't necessarily need even the old Watson for them to be a pretty competitive team in a lot of games, because this defense is really that good. And the last time they played the Ravens, they had to start DTR on like a couple hours of notice. He didn't even think that he was going to start that day. He was not prepared. Right. Baltimore, they committed this game off of a couple shellackings. I mean, they've beat the crap out of really good teams too. They've had 3 straight wins against teams by 24 plus points. They did not trail for one moment in any of those 3 games. This is only the 3rd team since the NFL merger to win 3 straight games against teams with a winning record by 24 points. They are number 1 in DVOA. They're super good. They're well balanced. I don't really have a bunch of knocks on them overall. I think the number's a little high for like a divisional game with a good defense. When you look at the total, right? The total is only 38 and we're almost up to a touchdown in here, and it's been kind of teetering around that. So to me, that was just sort of my first thought on this game overall. Talk to us about Browns Ravens.
I have a alternate personality who is a wrestling DJ known as the Undertaker, and the Undertaker loves football games like this. He loves tombstoning the fun out of them. My urn is filled with Brian Ferentz's burnt bonus checks for not scoring enough points this season. This feels like a two chin strap, snot bubbles and smelling salts kind of football game to me. Old school AFC North kind of football game. I decided to key in on the under. I like where your head's at, definitely with the 6.5 being, such a big number compared to how small that total, comparatively is. So
it's sort of like gambling 101, right? One of the first things you learn is like, if it's a low total and the spread's kind of high, well, they're telling you they're not going to be that many points. That might be a good way to go.
Right. I decided to just be really simple with it. I found that the best thing to do with some of these things is not get cute and just press my best opinion. And my best opinion is that this is going to be a very defensive football game. So I'm going to take the under 38 here. That's my big play for this game.
I like that one. You just feel like the Browns, they're going to get up for this game again because of what happened earlier in the year with this division rival, because of how good Baltimore has been playing. I don't think Baltimore is going to come in taking Cleveland lightly because it is a division rival here. I just expect, like you said, both teams' defenses to get up for this game. The Browns have some offensive line issues they're dealing with. Actually, so do the Ravens. Like Stanley didn't have a great game. He missed a block and ended up costing them a little bit. So I'd go with you there too. I would be under, and I would look to, if you're playing this game, I wouldn't want to lay it with the Ravens. I would lean on the Browns side there.
If you're looking at the game script too, you got to think that there's going to be a lot of running the football, and there's going to be a lot of running clock here.
Absolutely. On both sides. Ravens, Browns in a very intriguing game today. I mean, this is huge. We legitimately have 4 playoff teams in the AFC North. Yeah. All 4 of those teams would be in the playoffs right now. You feel like that'll change a little bit with these teams having to play each other down the stretch, but they've all played pretty well, and they all sort of have different positive attributes here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who lasts down the stretch. Right now, I feel like it might be Pittsburgh and maybe Cleveland that outside of the defense have the biggest questions, that being the offense and what's going on at quarterback.
Let's get to the Packers and the Steelers, our next game for today. So this one is right around 3. It's so funny. I'm just never used to seeing Pittsburgh giving any points. They're always getting some points, and that's why we like to play them. And this is just such a Pittsburgh season so far, where they are the first team in NFL history to get outgained by yardage in each of their first 8 games and have a winning record. There have been 34 teams in history that have gone through their first 8 games and have been outgained in every one, and none of them have had a winning record. It just doesn't make sense. When you're on the down to down getting beat over and over, you shouldn't be winning games. But they find a way, and now, like, rookie quarterbacks now after Levis are 1-13 against Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. He just shuts you down. You've got no shot there. For the first 3 quarters, Levis looked okay. And then in the fourth quarter, like, they just tighten the screws a little bit. I was reading these stats about Kenny Pickett, who grades out as like one of the bottom quarterbacks in quarters 1 through 3. And then in the fourth quarter, his passing grade is like equivalent to where Tom Brady's has been over the last couple of years. It's unbelievable. And there's such a small sample size that you almost think it's fluky, but it's the way they win these games. They somehow find a way to make some plays down the stretch. This is a weird game, though, Wolfie. This is one that I think I'm just going to stay away from, like, on the straight side here, because I've not really been impressed with a whole lot of what I've seen from Green Bay. Last week, they beat up on Ripien and a Rams team that just was struggling, and that game was a little closer than the score might have looked like. It wasn't like Green Bay was really impressive. They handed the ball off to Jones a lot, and so this one's like, this is the I don't want to touch this with a 39.5-foot pole, like the Grinch game for me, as we get closer and closer to Christmas. So yeah, I steer clear of this one.
I want to say it was week 2. I had a parlay that was busted up by the Packers last minute, not winning. I have played the Packers quite a few times this season because they have what is basically just like a reflex gambling move, a system play for me, which is if you're going to give me a spread of a field goal or less, and then I'm probably going to take the plus money shot at the dog on the money line here. I've done it so many times on the Packers now, and it's been wrong every single time that I'm going to run away from this game, in fact, because I can't do it again. My heart's been broken too many times.
And I think it was a little earlier in the week. If this was 3.5, I would be more inclined to get to the Packers side, because I just I don't really want to play the Steelers with margin. Right? They're not the type of team I ever like playing with, needing to cover by a field goal or more. You like playing the Steelers in the flip side. It's us against the world. They're a home dog, or, nobody believes in us type thing. This is a weird spot for this. Like, this is a Steelers lay an egg kind of a spot. You know what I mean? So I stay away. I can't get to either side. I will give them credit. No. Matt Canada, who's one of the worst offensive coordinators in the league, they brought him down on the sideline last week. And their offense looked a little bit better when he was down there calling plays. So maybe he saw some things down there, because Pickett's only thrown 6 touchdowns in 8 games.
They call that a Calgary switch when you bring Canada to the sideline.
I love that. Yeah. The Calgary reboot there.
It's so hard to trust either one of these teams. I have no trust for either one of them. I don't have any trust for the quarterbacks. It's a game that I want to stay away from because I feel like I have legitimately no clue what's going to happen in that game.
The real buzz over the last week has been all about CJ Stroud, the rookie, who has been fantastic. I mean, the Texans this year, they're 4-4. They were 3-13-1 last year. So they've already won more games. They're not this pushover team. They've only won 10 games combined the last 3 years, and you see they've got a stud rookie quarterback. Honestly, when you watch a team like this, it's hard for me to not believe in coaching, right? And just how this entire team feels more prepared. They feel like they give more of an F, right? Just on the down to down, they play harder than they used to before. And I think that is their coaching staff on offense and on defense. They've prepared their rookie quarterback. They actually invested a little bit in their offensive line in the offseason. So that helped just give him a little bit more time. My concern about this game, the Texans are pretty banged up coming into this game. This number's moved a little bit. It was closer to 7 just about a day or two ago. But I will say these two teams are both playing really well right now. They probably both are coming into this game at like peak value because now everyone's starting to get back on the Bengals bandwagon, right? You kind of look around the league. The good teams right now aren't really playing that well. And the Bengals have kind of quickly jumped right back up to like they're on that short list of Super Bowl contenders again. I think that this will be one of the games in the day that there might be some points though.
Yeah, and sometimes an undertaker can be an overstaker, as it turns out. Yeah. That's how I'm going to attack this one. I got the total at 47. I think I went ahead and went with the over because I do think that no matter what happens, one of these teams is going to hold up their end of the bargain when it comes to the scoring. If it's either going to be the banged up Texans, or it's going to be an equally banged up Bengals, depending on the status of Jamar Chase, given, how he fell just flat on his back last week. I've had that happen before. I know I'm nowhere near the athlete, but that is just painful. When you have time to flail as you fall to the ground, and the wherewithal that you're falling,
so both they're. I know. So they're without both. I think that may be some of the reason why the numbers kind of tilted towards Houston a little bit. There are a lot of injuries in this game on both sides. But I think you got the right with the number. Anything under 48, I would have gone over in here.
Yeah.
I just feel like I feel pretty consistent about both these teams' ability to score. It's kind of funny when you look at the Texans too, and you see that like they had 3 100-yard receivers in their last game. 2 of them were guys they got from Dallas this year, that the Cowboys could probably be using right now. I'm sure they wouldn't be upset to have Noah Brown and Schultz there when they don't seem to have as many weapons after like Lamb and then their tight end starting to get more in the mix a little bit. Feels like this is a game where there should be scoring. We're both hoping for scoring. And shout out to CJ Stroud, man. He's been fantastic so far early in the year. And when you have a quarterback, you just totally flip the perception of a team and a franchise quickly. It's amazing because the Bengals could be the team that they're trying to be, right? The Texans, because think about how bad the Bengals were for years. And then you get Joe Burrow and all of a sudden you're just a contender. You just are automatically a contender. And that's what the Texans are hoping to be with this guy. You have, especially we talked about like right now with all these young quarterbacks or inexperienced quarterbacks, if you can have a baseline quarterback of just top third of the league, where your guy is like a top 10 to top 12 quarterback, boom, you're going to be in really good shape for years to come.
If you're the Texans, I hope that the strategy is to win exactly enough games to be able to draft Marvin Harrison Jr.
God, I know,
next year.
I know.
You brought up a name that I really like in this game, though, and it's going to make an appearance later, but I think for fantasy propositions, Dalton Schultz, the tight end for Houston. Right now, I believe it's Cincinnati is 30th DVOA versus the tight end. So I think that this is a good spot to jump on Dalton Schultz, and I'm using him later in my anytime and first time touchdown round robin. But for fantasy purposes, also jump on it.
Beautiful. That's Bengals and Texans as we move to our next game. I got to say, my buddy, Josh Dobbs, fellow rocket scientist, he did great last week, because that's what I am, a rocket scientist.
As someone who watches a lot of Ancient Aliens, I got a lot of theories on Josh Dobbs. That's for sure.
Man, that was that's what football and sports are amazing because, you'll see things like this that happen. And what's cool is that there's always the stories and the narratives that just come. You don't have to write them, right? You don't have to script it. It's not WWE where we have to book this stuff. They just come. And you have a guy like Josh Dobbs who this year had actually played pretty well for Arizona, a bad team. Like he had been feisty in a few games where everyone just thought they were going to be a doormat. And that team started to get a little worse as it went on. But he gets traded basically because Arizona wants to lose and then they're going to bring in Kyler Murray, right? So it's like, hey, let's just get rid of Dobbs. Let's send him to a place where at least we can get something from him and he can go somewhere else and maybe help a team. So he comes in to Minnesota. They have Kirk Cousins get hurt. He's out for the year. They start Jaron Hall, who actually looks okay when he starts. Yeah. Like he's looking competent. He gets hit hard in the head, has to come out of the game. Dobbs comes in. Immediately, he looks terrible. He gets strip sacked. Then right after he gets sacked for a safety, he gives up 5 immediate points. Just looks like a guy who's not ready to go. And then he settles in. He starts making huge plays. He leads the team in rushing, 7 carries for 66 yards. He has been on 5 different teams, and he has moved 6 times in 1 calendar year, and actually less than a calendar year, because it was November 28th of last year. The guy just has been all over the place. His head coach was translating the calls and mapping them out for him in the huddle. He'd never taken an exchange with the center. So there's like these clips of him on the sideline, and he's like behind the center. And another thing, like there's all these little things that you don't even think of. The players on his team didn't know his voice, so they didn't know his cadences when he was. So there's these clips of him on the sidelines with the center and like the 4 on 5 offensive linemen next to him, and they're doing like little makeshift snaps, and the coach is telling him, okay, this is going to happen. And it's like, you're watching this going, there's no way this is going to work. This is going to be the worst thing that could possibly happen. And somehow this guy manages. And honestly, the one thing I will say about this Minnesota Vikings team, they try hard this year. Like they really battle. Their defense is 11th in EPA per play. They're 13th versus the pass. They're 10th versus the run. They're just a fine football team. They're not as bad as we would thought on the defensive side. Flores does some crazy stuff with the blitzing. He just keeps sending people at you. And now like this team has this sort of sense of like a we believe team, you know? It's like they've got something. I don't think I could lay the 3 with the Saints on the road here. I just haven't been that impressed with the Saints offensively either. I mean, last week they were in a game with Tyson Bagent late in that game, and they turned the ball over. The Bears did like 5 times. I feel like Minnesota plus the 3 is the side I want to be on in here, taking the home dog in this one. Talk to us about how you see this game playing out. Well,
as just a dirty homer, I of course am laying the 3 with the Saints here.
Absolutely.
I always try to play against like rookie
the narrative.
Well, yeah, in the second start. Always try to play against it in the second start because you get tape and everything. Here's my hesitation with this is how much of the tape of Josh Dobbs is actually useful,
right?
Like, you know, because you got to think he was running out to the huddle and saying, okay, post slant. You know, he doesn't know the terminology, you know.
Well, it's funny. It was almost like because they simplified it so much for him, he made less mistakes, right? Because it was literally like somebody telling you, you're going to throw it to the second guy making a post. You know what I mean? Like he was getting spoon-fed everything. This week, it's going to be a little bit different now where it's back to you having to make a lot more of the decisions yourself. And this is going to be a good defense he's playing in the Saints.
Right. And I think Dennis Allen will have something dialed up for him. It's not like it wasn't, you know, he wasn't playing for a, you know, division foe or anything, or sorry, a conference foe or anything. So he probably has some sort of scouting on Josh Dobbs. I think that it should be a game that they can kind of stymie him, and it kind of, you know, craps on the story as happens sometimes in the NFL.
The key is the number here too. Like this is another one where the half either way would be huge. Right? Like not having to lay the 3.5 with the Saints is big here. Just laying the 3. And if you're the Vikings, God, it would be nice to get that 3.5 at home to where you really felt like you could still lose this close game in here. So we may go beer bet in this one. This is one of our games that we're straight up against each other. It looks like a little bit Saints, Vikings. We move to 49ers versus the Jags. You've got a 49ers team who had everything go right for 5 weeks. And then for about 3 weeks, it flipped. And all of a sudden, everything went wrong. In sports, that happens, right? Things go well for you, and then they don't go well. It's very rare that it's so all one way and then all the other way, right? That was just
Sure.
like what happened with the Minnesota Vikings last year, where they won all those close games, and at the beginning of this year, they lose all the close games. It very rarely is so extreme that the 49ers look like you literally didn't think you could beat them through 5 weeks. You're just watching this team and nothing is going wrong. They've got every one of their like quality players healthy. Brock Purdy's making great throws, and he's not even really having to do too much. And then McCaffrey gets hurt. Trent Williams gets hurt. Debo gets hurt. A couple defensive guys get hurt. They got to go play in a couple tough places. Teams have a little bit more film and tape now on Purdy, right? They start to know some of the things that he does wrong. Now you got this 49ers team coming off the bye. They're a little healthier. Jacksonville, kind of quietly, you look at their record and you're like, damn, it doesn't feel like Jacksonville just keeps winning, but they do, right? They just keep winning repeatedly. And you feel like for both of these two teams, this is a pretty big game. Like I think for Jacksonville, they're going to want to try to show up at home and prove that they belong with, maybe the top tier in the NFL. If you're San Francisco, you cannot lose 4 games in a row when Seattle is actually tied with you for the division right now. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other, but I'm very excited just to watch this game overall today as one of the most intriguing games of the day.
I guess my question would be is how good is Joey Bosa and how good is Chase Young as a run stuffer? Because I think that's more going to be the question in this game is how well do they shut down Travis Etienne, who has been, I've got him on my fantasy team, so I know for a fact he has been going off the last few weeks.
And way better than I ever would have thought, being like a between the tackles down to down guy. I just didn't think that he had that. I thought he was more of a, let's get him 15 touches, some carries, throw the ball to him a little bit. He has been awesome right up the gut, and that's a great point because San Francisco, that has been one of their major weaknesses this year. Defensively, we kind of think of them as this incredible defense. They have not been good against the run at all. And it's been a little deceiving because they beat up teams early, so you couldn't really run against them, right? You're down by 3 scores. You have to throw. You're not really able to exploit their weakness, which is if you run at their really aggressive defensive front, it like dilutes them, right? It sort of takes away all that aggressiveness when you run right at them and they're coming around you and you just pick up 4 or 5 yards right up the middle.
You know what? This wasn't going to be a play, and it's one of those things where you get together, you have what you feel like is a decent opinion. You get together with someone that you know who you feel like they have good opinions, and you're like, you know what? Just have to do it. And when I'm looking, especially at the odds that I could get right now through DRF at -104, that's a steal, I think, at the +3. So I'd be
agree.
1 unit on that, and then a half unit sprinkle on the money line here. Let's go ahead and put on big boy pants.
Yep, we're both going to be flying the Jags flags today. Trevor Lawrence, let's do this. Let's get a lot to Etienne repeatedly. We're on the Jags side here against the 49ers. We keep rolling along on Sunday here. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us. We appreciate you spending part of your Sunday with me and Chase the Wolf. I think I'm going to join Chase coming up on his show in the next week or so to talk some horse racing. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll be able to cap some races for some of you out there who also like to play the ponies. Chase, we will move to our next game. And I will say I've been very impressed so far with Will Levis. I didn't know what to expect from him coming out of college because I thought his senior year or his final year at Kentucky was a little disappointing. I don't think he kind of took the big step that everybody was hoping, but he's always sort of looked like a prototypical quarterback, right? He's sort of he's one of those guys that has a lot of the tools, and you feel like if you put him with good coaching, with a good system, that he looks like an NFL quarterback. And through the first couple of weeks, I think he's passed the eye test so far. The mistakes that he made last week, they all made a ton of sense. He struggled in the red zone against Pittsburgh, and he struggled on third down. That's where things get a little bit more difficult, where you've got to make more tough decisions. But he definitely gives Tennessee a much better stretch down the field option, right? He actually looks like a guy who can help move them down the field. And I think it's smart for Tennessee with a good coach like Vrabel. Hey, maybe we got this young guy. Let's just roll with him. Tannehill was only going to get them to a certain spot anyway. So just on the big picture, I think Levis, give him a shot. I think he's looked pretty good overall. And you look at Tampa now, They're home. They've had 4 straight losses. And for Tampa, what's been difficult for them is they can't play a complete game. It's like the 1 week, their offense will play awesome. Last week, Baker was great, and Baker's had like 4 or 5 games this year where he's been really good. Offense has been good, but then their defense gives up some big plays, or like they just can't run the ball at all in some of those games. So they become a little one-dimensional. Then they'll have games where the defense plays great and they can't move the ball at all because their coaching isn't really a great offensive schemed team, right? They're more of like a defensive built team. So they're one of the tougher teams for me to get a gauge on, I think, in the entire league. Talk to us about the Bucks and the Titans.
I think mostly I'm interested in this from a fantasy standpoint because I think I have somebody who's just might be a terrific value if you maybe have only a few bucks and you need to fill like a wide receiver 3 flex kind of spot. You mentioned he looks great throwing the ball down the field. He looks great throwing the ball down the field to D-Hop, especially in his 4 touchdown game. 3 of those 4 went to D-Hop. And they're going to be devoting, Tampa Bay is at least, a lot of resources to stopping D-Hop over the top, which makes me think that there's some little guys that are going to feast underneath. And I'm using them in the round robin later. But for fantasy purposes, Kyle Phillips. The Buccaneers, 32nd in DVOA rank against wide receiver 3. There have been so many injuries. I had to kind of, figure out who Kyle Phillips was. But yeah, I guess he fits the mold of wide receiver 3 at this point. So let's go Kyle Phillips for the fantasy sleeper move today.
Super under the radar if you're building a fantasy lineup, DraftKings or FanDuel, someone who's not going to cost you much at all to include in your lineup and could get just the option of a few extra big looks with an arm. They're throwing the ball more. They're going to lean. They're able to dial up a few extra things here with Levis. So play for you.
Think what they could do with the RPO with Henry and him just hitting slants across the middle with everyone focusing in on Henry. Just boom, Phillips, boom, Phillips. That's what I'm hoping for at least.
Absolutely. And then they get a little Spears in the mix too, who's very good out of the backfield for them too. It's just they have some weapons here. They're well coached. I think it just has to all come together. Like I feel like if this team, and I don't know if he was prepared, he wasn't healthy, but I just don't almost feel like if they had a healthy Levis to start the year, there might have been 2 more wins in there for them somewhere. Or you just feel like what they might have been able to do with the offense would have been more well-balanced throughout the year. It wouldn't have felt like there's some of these games where it's like, they can't run the ball at all. Or now there's these games where all they're trying to do is run the ball. Tampa, Titans. We move to Arthur Smith, man. Arthur freaking Smith, coach of the Falcons. I can't wait for the next 7-minute explanation on why he's not giving Bijan the ball. Like you always know when someone has to go for 5 minutes to answer like a simple question that they're just talking themselves in circles. And it's like, God, this guy has had some good, to me, he's one of the perfect examples of good coordinator, not a good head coach.
Yeah, I agree. There's
too many balls in his court. Too much for him.
Like,
having to deal with the media stuff, having to deal with like the personnel of all these different guys and their personalities versus just like, let's call plays, let's run an offense, or let's do that. You can just tell that he's overwhelmed. Like he comes to the press conferences thinking about how he's going to say something like snarky to the reporters. Like he's trying to be like a Bill Belichick or trying to be like a Popovich kind of guy where it's like, dude, you haven't done anything yet. Why are you getting so cute? Like,
do you see his mustache and think who did you feel like didn't like respect your authority? Like why the mustache?
100%. It's Farva. It's a Farva mustache. No doubt about it. He's sitting in the back. Shenanigans? He says shenanigans, man. You're talking about shenanigans? Like that's him. And man, you hear all these stories start to come out. It's amazing when someone has like a bad week or there's just like a guy, especially when someone's a little nasty to media, because he's been sort of a dick to reporters and people who are just asking him questions, like legitimate questions. Why aren't you giving your first round, like number 7 overall pick the ball more? You guys have like 3 first round draft picks on your offense that you never give the ball to them. Why? Oh, well, and he gets pissed off and he starts trying to explain why and stuff. And man, you get these stories
Meanwhile,
about, his. Go ahead.
He got to spend the entire year last year running a wide receiver as his running back with Cordero Patterson. Now he's got like a stud, a dude in his backfield. He just doesn't want to give him the ball now. That's cool.
It's
like
deal. You almost seen these things where it's like, you wonder if like he doesn't like him. And I don't know. And it's hard for me to like judge someone like this because I've got friends that are filthy rich and have really rich families and really rich parents, and they're great people. It's not like that. But this guy his dad's like a billionaire. He's grown up not needing to be like really work hard, deal with all the stuff that comes with it. Like not everything goes your way, and then you got to explain it, right? You get in trouble in class, and you actually got to deal with it. Your dad doesn't come in and make it easier for you. You sort of get the sense with this guy that like, every time he's been punched in the face, he's never really had to punch back or like suck it up. And man, I'm really concerned overall with this team and with his like losing the locker room for this team, because if your guy's in there and you hear some of the stuff he's saying and you've got some of your better players that are just not getting the ball, it's got to be frustrating to you. This is another one of those 10-foot pole games because I have no idea what to expect from Kyler Murray. None whatsoever. Like, didn't a new one of those new video games just come out like on Friday night too? One of his big Fortnites or whatever it is. He's going to be. Yeah. I'm sure he had been focused, but I really have no clue. James Conner should be back too. Atlanta's actually a pretty good team overall. Like their defense is a lot better this year, but they've just been kind of a clown show. They're coming off that embarrassing loss to where they lost to Dobbs, who wasn't even prepared at all. But man, I just don't trust either of these two teams to take the side one way or the other. Chase, do you?
I actually do. I'm going to, I mentioned that this is a little bit of a system play for me. We got spread less than a field goal. I got a home dog getting plus money on the money line. So yeah, that's a sprinkle that I'm going to play. And it's because I'm betting. I feel like that's enough value to take the gamble that Kyler Murray is
the wild card. Okay. The X factor.
Exactly.
100%. 100%. Because maybe he doesn't, maybe he's not. But we forget Kyler Murray, because there's like this bad negative connotation that kind of comes with him. His first 2 years were very, very good. Very good. And in particular, he was always good to start like the first half of the year. And then once he would get a little bit banged up and once you'd sort of be able to figure out his speed a little bit more, then you'd be able. But he's one of those players where the first time you play him, he's really tough to defend. He's different. Yeah. He's a running quarterback who can actually throw the ball down the field pretty well with like solid accuracy. So yeah, I think if I wouldn't want to lay the number with Atlanta. If I was going to get talked into this game, it would be on the side that you are with Arizona there at plus money. And you can even get a little plus money on the money line there with Arizona at home if that was something you liked. Let's go Lions at the Chargers. So you have the Lions now as a 2.5-point favorite on the road here playing the Chargers. Now, it's not as if the Chargers are going to have an incredible home field advantage here. And they come off a game where they only had 191 yards of total offense. It feels weird to me, Chase, seeing these games where the Lions are favored like this. I'm just so used to a world where like this Lions team is never favored in a spot like this. And now they're actually favored in a spot on the road. That's the thing that makes me a little bit nervous here. Just the value.
They started at the bottom. They ate some kneecaps, and now they're here.
I know.
That's how they did it, man.
Exactly. They probably won't have to deal with the weather stuff, right? It won't be like bad weather. It's not going to be cold. So those are some of the things that usually impact Jared Goff. But yeah, I mean, a very good game, right? I think two teams that are good. I think the Chargers are kind of thought about as a little better than their record. Usually they kind of spit out a lot of games. And the Lions, when you look at the Eagles and the schedule they have coming up, and you look at the 49ers and they've had a couple hiccups, the Lions kind of quietly, if they win a game like this, could be in line to have possibly the best record in the NFC. They do have a pretty soft schedule. When you look at their division, there's really not that many world beaters in there. Talk to us about this game, Lions Chargers.
For some reason, when I see this Lions team, I kind of start to think of like the Torrey Holt, Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk Rams a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that, especially if they start, and I, as an owner of Jahmyr Gibbs, really hope this starts happening, that they start giving Jahmyr Gibbs the football. This is another one where I want to actually just kind of stay exclusively to the total, because I think you're going to get like a Pac-12 kind of scoring game here. Like I could easily see this being somewhere in the 30 something to 20 something sort of range.
Yeah.
And so I want to play the over here. I can actually get, especially looking at DRF here, I can get a little bit of value playing the 48.5, which it looks also encouraging to me that this hasn't really moved. It makes me think that not a lot of people are really into this pool. And I can get a little value there at minus 109 versus minus 110, which would be my opinion of the Lions minus 2.5. So I'm going to go ahead and just play with the total and just cheer yay fun whenever people score points.
I think that's the play in here too. Honestly, we're at 48.5. I think both of these teams will be able to go up and down. I can even see like turnover, because the defenses are aggressive for both of these teams. Like you've got Bosa back now and they're trying to put pressure on the quarterback. I could even see defensive, like a turnover for either of these teams, short field, set up another touchdown. So I'm with the Wolf on this one. We're looking for points in Lions and the Chargers. A couple more games for us to discuss on Sunday and on Monday. We go to the biggest line of the week. Tommy DeVito and the New York Giants are a 17.5 point underdog against the Dallas Cowboys. I was listening to the PFF podcast that was doing their week 10 preview. And one of the guys, I think his name's Sam, he said, in just a very simple setup of this game, like if you were explaining this game to somebody who doesn't know football, and you would just say, you've got the Giants starting a rookie quarterback who is probably one of the, if not the worst quarterback that has played this year and that has taken snaps, a guy who couldn't really even start in college, against the best pass rushing team in the league. Like right there, that is the reason why this spread is so huge. You've got a horrible offensive line on the Giants side. And so just right there, like watching them, it feels like it's going to be so difficult for them to move the ball. And I'm not laying this number with Dallas, but Dallas is the bully that beats up on the teams that they're just way better than. And then when they step up and play anyone that's close to them, they get like punched in the face 5 times and they get knocked out. But the teams that they're better than, they pick on you. They're like the worst older brother that exists, right?
Yeah.
That just is all over their little brother. But then they're like not a tough guy at all. They don't stand up for their little brother. They just want to pick on them. Like they're like the worst big brother in the world. That's why this is another game where sidewise, I want absolutely nothing to do with, because dude, the Cowboys could be winning this game by 20 points, by 21, 23 points the entire game. And the Giants could get some garbage late backdoor touchdown that means nothing, but that covers the game. So from I would never want to lay this big of a number. And you know what? Dallas's offense hasn't even really been that fantastic throughout a lot of this year, but seeing this number in a game where the total is only 38.5, like that is so crazy.
Absurd. Let's see. Tommy DeVito starting. He's going against a really good pass rush and secondary. Let's call it throw mama to the secondary. That's probably what's going to happen a lot. I can see a lot of interceptions in the game. Owen! The night was sultry. I think that I don't want to touch this game. It's something I say every Saturday morning on the tailgate with Uncle Rico and with Jim is I don't want to be the guy with that ticket in my pocket. I don't want to be the guy with that Dallas Cowboys minus 17.5 ticket in my pocket when they somehow find a way to not cover 17.5. Don't touch it.
And you don't want to be rooting for Tommy DeVito to get to you to that plus 17. You just don't, and this is one of those games too, where Dallas, like, they do beat up on them, but if Dallas is up by 3 scores, they're not going to worry about pouring it on anymore. Dallas is actually going to probably look around. And like I said, the Eagles have a tough schedule and Dallas does not. They want to keep winning games because they can be right back in line for the division and possibly like a big seed in the NFC if they can keep doing that. But this is an ugly game here as we move to Seattle and Washington. We've got the Commies at the Seahawks. Seattle is a 6-point favorite in this game, over under 44.5.
I'm sitting here thinking, how have I never heard the Commies yet? That's right? So good.
Yeah, I know. It does make me chuckle when I hear the old Washington Commies. So Sam Howell has dropped back 48 times more than any other quarterback in the league. That is just crazy to me. But Bieniemy came over and I was reading this article that said, did Bieniemy forget that he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes back there? And he's just like, I'm going to run the same offense. And you know what? That's sort of the offense that you have to run in modern day football, is that even though this team isn't fantastic, they give themselves a lot of chances, right? He just drops back more. And I will say, Sam, they call him Sack Howell, which is what a bad nickname, right? You're like, hey, Sack, get over here. Sam Sack Howell is going to break Tom Brady's record if he stays healthy for the most dropbacks in a season. He actually has the most big time throws in the NFL. It's not like he's actually, the more opportunities you give him, he is a real gunslinger type guy.
And he's got weapons too.
He does. And now he's got a good offensive coordinator, like a good offensive mind who knows how to put these guys in position. They're not a fantastic football team, but they're like a little bit feisty. And this to me felt like it was a little high for Seattle, just like laying a little bit much for Seattle here. They're kind of quietly under the radar, a team that you look up and you're like, oh wow, Seattle's 5-3, huh? It's like, it feels like you don't see or hear a lot about Seattle this year. And what I don't like is that Geno Smith, I always have to say Smith, because anytime somebody just talks about negative Geno stuff, I get nightmares. I'm like, hey, don't say that about Geno. Geno can manage the offense. Geno can do things. Don't badmouth Geno's as like this overall, like, I'm thinking of the scene from Simpsons where it says no homers allowed in the treehouse, and Homer's like, but Homer McKayle's in there. It says no homers. Like that's what happens when I hear all the negative Geno stuff.
I was gonna ask you, like, if he does poorly, are you like, that's a Geno with an E?
It's a different. Can you please use full names? Geno Smith. When I hear the Smith, because it used to be when he was with the Jets, he would make a great play and they would be Geno. And I was like, oh, this is what it sounds like in my dreams. And then he would throw an interception and it would be Geno sucks. It was like my dreams versus my nightmares having this battle every time I watched Geno Smith out there. But he has been struggling a little bit lately. He's had 3 consecutive games with multiple turnovers. I think he has 13 interceptions in his last 15 games. They just got destroyed last time we saw them against Baltimore. They had 6 first downs. They went 1 of 12 on third down. That's like a burn the tape kind of game.
Yeah.
I still am on the Washington side here just because I think this is too many points. Like I think this is a close game that comes down to like the last possession and Seattle probably wins. I just feel like this should probably be closer to like Seattle -4 than Seattle -6 here.
I agree, because like you said, with Sam Howell, he's got, he gets sacked a lot, but he also throws the ball pretty well and throws it a lot, and he's got weapons like Jahan Dotson, like he's got weapons like Terry McLaurin. He's got, was it Brian Robinson, many men wish death upon me, Brian Robinson. I know. Dude, like the number feels way too big. I could actually see this being quite the shootout. The total kind of reflects it. I'm staying away from it other than player props. I did use someone from this game for my Rob Roy later on.
Isn't it in Wedding Crashers? Don't they call the Bradley Cooper guy Sack? Isn't that
that's right.
Like that?
Yes. That's
great. I'm great. It's like I can just hear him and his like douchebaggy friends calling him Sack, and he's over in the corner. He's like, and the poor seal, and I'm rubbing the seal, and he's doing the and he's telling telling the story, and they're just like, oh man,
nursing him back to life.
Nursing the seal back. This, and when he does the seal, and he looks over, and Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson are just like, are you kidding me with this dude over here? This guy. Shout out Owen Wilson. I've been watching a lot of Loki lately. He's fantastic in there. Owen Wilson's fantastic in everything. Couple more Sunday games, actually one more Sunday and a Monday game for us to discuss. We've got the Raiders. They just beat the crap out of the Giants last week. And it's so funny to see when a team just hates their coach and how well they play the week after the coach gets fired. Like the fired coach bump is like almost undefeated in life. It mainly when you know the coach is an awful coach like McDaniels. I mean, the stories coming out of the room. Did you hear the one about like sort of the last straw? How Pierce comes in there. They're having this big players meeting with everyone, the players, coaches. They're all getting everything out on the table. Players are telling McDaniels they hate him. Why this isn't working? This isn't working. Everyone's going at each other. And then Pierce gets up and he everyone starts to listen to him and he kind of rallies the troops and he says, guys, you know what? It's all about attitude and caring. I was on the Giants team that wasn't as good, but we beat that undefeated Patriots team, and we knew and we believed, and everybody's like getting excited, and the whole team is like, you know what? Yeah, like we can do this. And McDaniels comes in and goes, don't you talk about that Patriots team like that. Like, read the room, dude. Like, how do you not, like, how is that your response to a guy totally saving you and getting everybody to believe? It's like he's so out of touch with reality. And the Belichick coaching tree that we're seeing is awful. It's like they were all protected in this little world in New England with Belichick. And after they left, Patricia was awful. I mean, the stories about McDaniels and how bad of a people person he is, and how many of the players hated him, how awkward he was, how he just thought, I'm going to walk in here, it's my way. And he did all of this 10 years ago when it didn't work. And it was like, I'm going to come in here and do the same exact thing, not try to change at all, and hope it was everybody else that was wrong the first time. It wasn't me.
So he did this interview before he took that job, and he was like, well, you know, I was like 35. I was like 33 whenever I took the head coaching job in Denver. I've had 15 years. I've learned quite a bit. It's like you learned quite a bit, but apparently you chose to not deploy any of that knowledge at any point. Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. So glad you learned it. Do something with it next time. If there is. There probably won't be.
This team, the Raiders, and who knows how long it will last, they just looked like an inspired football team last year. The effort was so much better overall. You know, Aiden O'Connell was actually a guy who looked pretty good in the preseason, you know, and he looked fine last week. Yeah. Like, the key is with a lot of these young guys is, and like you were getting to this point, is the mistakes. If you just don't make the big mistakes, how much better you look than if it's like, oh my God, why did he throw that ball? If you just can take some sacks here or there, throw the ball away a couple times, and not make those like ball-breaking, game-changing mistakes that flip it on a pick six. And that's what happened last week with this guy. He just was more comfortable, no turnovers, didn't take any sacks. They protected him a little bit better, and their team put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And now, I mean, I look at this game, and this is one thing that our buddy Uncle Rico will usually say. Who is Zach Wilson to be laying points on the road? This is an Eric
win with margin,
right? This is an Eric catchphrase, and I agree with him, because a lot of times when you just tell yourself that in a simple sense, like who is Zach Wilson to be laying points on the road here? I think this is a good spot for the Raiders again to play a team that they can actually compete with and beat, a team that's not going to go up and down the field on them, the Jets. An offensive line that's not been good at all. They allowed 8 sacks and a bunch of pressure last week. Would it be shocking to me if the Raiders did not play well this week and they're not that good? That wouldn't shock me. But I think I'm going to keep riding them a little bit and until they show me that they're not going to be as inspired. Because I think that their assistant coach, then their coach now, the guy that got this team riled up, and now you have no McDaniels around. You kind of have a clean slate for your team. I like the Raiders in this spot.
Yeah, you're insane if you think I'm doing anything but betting, especially at even money right now. The Raiders on the money line. Just oh yeah, like let's not worry about points. Let's take the best value, and all they have to do is win. Like yes, let's do it because it's something XFL Jim and I talk about all the time. Rally around the interim. The rally around the interim angle. They're so good to bet back that first game. But I'm with you. I feel like that had some of the biggest big rally around the interim energy that I've seen in the NFL in a long time. So I'm with you. It's
and the Raiders. The Raiders did this a couple of years ago, right? With Gruden, they rallied around.
I was just thinking how funny it's going to be whenever he gets them to the playoffs and then they fire him and like he doesn't
fire him. They don't bring him back next year, and it's like let's go bring in. They go get like Adam Gase, or they go get like it's going to be Hackett. The guy,
exactly. That's exactly who I was going to see. It's going to be Hackett.
Like, there's no way that he's like, you know what? I'm going to give Urban Meyer a shot here. You know what I mean? Like that would be one of those. But it is funny how with just like a week or two of changing a coach, how much more I want to see the Raiders do well now. Just like 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh man, like I didn't care about them. You just didn't like their energy. And I think a lot of it came from their head coach, Dan. And now you just sort of feel the opposite. Like, I want to see this team go out there and play well, play hard. And now the Raiders, we've got some great primetime football games. We had a good Thursday night one. That's Sunday Night Football, Jets, Raiders. And then we go Broncos at the Bills for Monday Night Football. So Buffalo, man, they're struggling right now. They're obviously banged up. Right. So we can say that like they've been legitimately hurt. With Milano, you'd never see something like this for a linebacker. With Milano, the Buffalo Bills defense was 5th in passing success rate allowed and 2nd in EPA per play allowed. They were very good. Without Milano, they're 31st in passing success rate allowed and 28th in EPA per play allowed, which is just unbelievable because this guy's at the center of their defense. So he's sort of like the cat. He knows where everyone should be. He helps put guys in the right spot on the field. He really does do more than just one normal linebacker. And on top of all of the injuries they've had, they've got these like slow starts. They can't start well, and it's happened over and over. So they have an opening drive touchdown. Then they gain 37 yards the rest of the half. Against the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Bills, they had 7 points going into the fourth quarter in all of those games. And they had 10 with 5 minutes left last week. So you have these defensive struggles, and now for some reason your offense isn't flowing. And I know we look at it, and it kind of makes sense, Wolf, because they don't run the ball that well without Allen. And they've got like pieces, but they don't seem like they really have like a strong number 2 after Stephon Diggs. It's like Diggs and then now it's Kincaid kind of getting up there. You'll get Davis who jumps into the mix. There was Saphir who kind of came out of nowhere for them. But it feels like they're missing like a playmaker more on offense and then a couple pieces on defense. I mean, this team is 5-4 now. And they've not been covering. Like, since that awesome game against Miami, they haven't covered a game.
Yeah, here's the deal is I think that, all right, you know how they call Daniel Jones Vanilla Vic?
I like that, yes.
I think that Josh Allen is Vanilla Jameis. I said it. That's right, I said it. I think that he is Vanilla Jameis. If you look at how many interceptions he has thrown through, like, the last 5 years, he has thrown more interceptions than anybody else in the NFL. And he's also got this up and down performance that Jameis Winston seemed to always had, the good Jameis, bad Jameis cycle. I think that might be going on with him.
It's a mental thing, I think, too, for him, because when you know you have less defensively, right? And you know you have to do more, it's really hard to talk someone off the ledge, right? Hey, Josh, we don't need you to do that, but we do need me to do that.
That's
like,
right,
I do need to take a Right?
Who's the playmaker on that team? Who's the playmaker? Well, it's Josh Allen. It's
He's
like,
got to
hey,
make the
Josh.
plays. He's got to run. He's got to do it. Like, I've seen the same sort of thing happen with Caleb Williams at USC.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
You put a really good player who's got all the tools, like he can make all the throws and he can run, but you put him in this spot where now you're like, hey, just try to go be Superman. And when they do, there's going to be a bobble here and there. You're going to make an extra throw. They're so much better when, like, obviously anyone's better with the better defense, but we saw Josh Allen a couple times here and there in like stretches of like 8 or 10 games where when everything around him is going well, he doesn't mind making a throwaway, or he'll like slide and not try to get hit right in the face, like, or like hit in the head, right? Like run straight up. But man,
I don't have to jump over everybody, it turns out.
Right. But this year, right now, with this squad and this roster, he does.
Yeah.
And you can see the wheels in his head moving, him knowing that he has to do that. And that's what worries me about ever playing this team with margin. Ever. You know, and like the Broncos are a train wreck and people like to laugh at them. But you know what? Their offense throughout a lot of this year has been pretty good. And then the last couple weeks, since they had that really bad defense, the game against where they gave up 70, they've actually played the Chiefs twice pretty well and held them down. And the Chiefs aren't as big of an offense as they've been other years. But yeah, I can't. At 7, I'm playing the Broncos here just because the 7 getting that key number, and I take the Broncos plus the 7. I can't keep playing the Bills in situations like this overvalued with margin when they've showed us now 4 weeks in a row already against bad teams they don't cover.
Yeah, I can't get on either side, and I don't want to mess with the total because we mentioned all the bugaboos that we have, all the different peccadillos that we have with the Buffalo Bills. But when it comes to the Denver Broncos, I don't trust the performances against Kansas City because that's a rivalry game. That's one of the few. And like a heated.
There was also that like rivalry. Was there 18 in a row that they had been beat by them too, right? So there had to have been a little bit more in those games where it's like, we cannot let this team keep beating us, right? We got to get up a little more for this game.
Yeah, and they through that stretch kept playing them close and kept playing close. So of course they finally broke through. I don't want any part of Denver coming off of that, and I don't trust Josh Allen, who I've now dubbed the Vanilla Jameis, to bring it home. So just
and what's nice,
shift change at that blackjack table. I'm out.
Boom. And what's nice is that even when there's games that we talk about that we don't love, it's not like it was 20 or 30 years ago. You don't have to just play one side of the game. You have a bunch of different ways you found value today. Talk to us about some of the plays you have. I think you've got a parlay, you've got a round robin, a few things that are on your slate. Tell us what you're looking at today on today's menu.
You know, as a horse racing enthusiast, I feel like it's hard to get from sports sometimes the great big odds that you can get from horse racing. And I think that playing the first touchdowns and anytime touchdowns and having the ability to round robin them, where if you can just miss one of them, it's not a big deal. It can be so lucrative because if you're just right about 2 of them, you're likely going to pay for your ticket as well as turn a profit. So I went through, I took Gino was kind enough to share some fantasy stats with me. I got to digging in last night and I kind of picked out some players who are going against teams who are just weak DVOA versus, weak ranked DVOA teams versus their respective positions, put together this anytime and first time touchdowns prop. So I took a look at Drake London. You have the Cardinals 32 against wide receiver 1. I feel like you're getting a little extra value there because you have who's going to be throwing the ball in Atlanta. Is it Desmond Ridder? Okay, but I still think that he could thrive. Dalton Schultz, as I mentioned, he's another anytime touchdown plus 200 that I'm using because I think that once again Cincinnati weak against the tight end. DK Metcalf going up against Washington.
This one a lot. Yeah.
I actually went first touchdown there because I think that you have to take that gamble at some point. I could do this as anytime touchdowns, but the first touchdown is really going to add some value to that ticket. Another anytime, Michael Thomas. We got the Minnesota Vikings. They're weak against wide receiver 2. I'm going to consider Chris Olave wide receiver 1 and think that Michael Thomas might have some opportunities. Plus, he's only scored 1 touchdown this year. He's friggin' due, especially after last week where he was just kind of sick and like a decoy last week. I think you see a healthy Michael Thomas, and he can have at plus 230 a decent little anytime touchdown. And last but not least, I'm really swinging with a 20-1 first touchdown that I'm adding in there. Kyle Phillips against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's my super hot take that Kyle Phillips just goes off, and then the next year we celebrate Kyle Phillips Day on the 12th of November.
We got London anytime touchdown, Dalton Schultz anytime touchdown, DK Metcalf first time touchdown, Michael Thomas anytime, and Kyle Phillips the big swing first time touchdown there. Couple different plays, and you're going to play them all in a parlay and a round robin.
That's right. I'll do it as a 5-team parlay, which $1 would bring back $4,800.
Sure.
If I do it as a 2-team parlay, I'm still getting almost 446 to 1. Just with if I hit every single combination. But like I said, I only really need one combination of these 5 to come in, and I can probably turn a profit, and a decent one at that.
Beautiful. Well, folks, I appreciate all of you hanging out with us this week for NFL Betting Blitz. Don't forget, you can head to parlayplay.io and use our promo code NFL Betting Blitz. If you want to get some more action today, you can play props. You can parlay things together, all sorts of different wagers you can make every day. Baseball, basketball, football, horse racing, soccer. I don't think they have horse racing, soccer stuff on there. They've got a bunch of different ways that you can play at Parlay Play. Use that promo code NFL Betting Blitz. Like I said, the different ways you can play is what's unique about this site. They give you ranges you can bet. You can go over or under particular range, like certain ranges. You can go over or under receptions, yards, fantasy points, which is something that you don't get all other places. NFL Betting Blitz, that's the promo code. Wolfie, what's really fun about being a freelance worker covering sports is you get to interact with all sorts of different places, people here and there. And for you and I, it was a blast working with you for a long time. For probably about a year, we would talk a couple different times a week. And then the life of freelance workers, they kind of float different places into other spots. And I didn't really talk with you or do a whole lot of work with you. And now it was a blast seeing you fill in for me the last couple of weeks and getting to chat with you. And then we'll get to chat a little bit later on this week on your show. So it was great to get to talk to you. I appreciate all the work that you put in, all the prep work you always do. And let's crush it this weekend, my friend. Yeah, man, absolutely. Back to the Carolina leagues for me. There we go. There we go. We're going to get you in the mix with us plenty because we'll need your help during the holiday season too. And really when football gets into the big bowl season of college football, and then we'll get into NFL playoffs too. So the Wolf of Oaklawn, make sure to give him a follow. He does a great job covering sports, covering horse racing, and he's got a great sense of humor too. So if you really want to go back and forth with someone on social media, he'll always give you a good laugh there. Thank you so much, buddy. Good luck to you. Good luck to everyone out there. And I hope you all crush it today.